Good day everyone, my name is Dan Alan Peregrino, and today we'll present to you our research proposal about assessing the harvest of the local farmers in New Lucena before and during quarantine. Let me introduce you my fellow researchers. Kian Dominic Palermo, J. Kim Estrella, Angelo Ortega, Jennifer Suerte, and Paul Nathaniel Martinez. The worldwide health crisis COVID-19 pandemic has imposed a lot of destructive impacts, directly or indirectly on the world economy. This widespread of virus has brought to us not only the risk of accessing the disease, but also the lack in food production. Many local farmers have suffered greatly since local goods have been harvested. This means that the quarantine period has disadvantaged local farmers in terms of their local food production and distribution. It will also alert municipalities to the current problems faced by local farmers and help them solve the problem by providing them with financial assistance in launching their goods. The aim of this study is to find out what effects quarantine has brought to local farmers in New Lucena. The study addressed the concern of the local farmers in the midst of the pandemic and to know the alternative that they practiced during the quarantine. At this moment of quarantine, the researcher will be of hinder to perform an interview with the existing local farmers of the three municipalities. The majority of our research team are also not capable of going outside according to the protocols imposed by the local government. In order to supply the need of the research data, and by following the protocols strictly to ensure the health safety of the team, the researchers will do several online collaboration and video chats. By doing so, the proposed data of submission will be followed alongside. Thank you.
The objectives of this study is to find out the effects of the quarantine to local farmers, specifically the following: to find out if farmers have increased or decreased harvest during the quarantine, to compare this last year's harvest to that of last year's from March to September, to find out if farmers have changed crops because of the quarantine, to compare this year's income per harvest of the farmers during the quarantine to that of the last year's income per harvest before the quarantine. Significance: this study will greatly benefit farmers as it will serve as status update on what crops has the highest yield to plant during the community quarantine. Also, this study will greatly benefit municipalities as it will serve as a tool to help them persuade municipality agencies to help and assist farmers during quarantine by giving out financial and agricultural support. Furthermore, this study will greatly benefit other researchers as it can serve as reference for those who aim to conduct the research on a bigger scale. Scope and limitations: this study can only be done to determine the effects of quarantine to local farmers in New Lucena. The estimated participants will be more or less 30 local farmers. The researchers will be responsible for handing out research-made questionnaires to gather data needed to accomplish the objectives of the research. The study will be conducted in 2 months for collection, analyzing of the given data, and finalizing of statistics. Definition of terms: harvest. According to Oxford Learner's Dictionary, harvest refers to the time of the year when the crops are gathered in on a farm, etc. The act of cutting and gathering crops. In this study, harvest refers to the amount of crops gathered by the local farmers before and during quarantine. It can be measured in terms of kilogram per sack, yield per acre, and etc. Quarantine. According to Oxford Dictionary, quarantine refers to a period of time when an animal or a person that has or may have a disease is kept away from others in order to prevent the disease from spreading. In this study, quarantine refers to a period of time where people are prevented from going out to avoid spread of coronavirus. Local. According to Oxford Dictionary, local refers to belonging to or connected with a particular place or area that you are talking about, or with the place where you live. In this study, local refers to people who live in the area permanently. Farmers. According to Oxford Dictionary, farmers refers to a person who owns or manages a farm. In this study, farmers refer to people who manages a farm during quarantine period.
Everyone, may I present to you our theoretical framework. According to Mehmet 2010, concepts such as resilience, the ability of the communities, smallholders to survive the external, social, political, and environmental change stress and disturbance, and hence preserve a chain level of well-being. in Nodlov 2019 stated that smallholders can produce various food crops on land for personal consumption in sale, while regardless rangelands can provide goods and services that can sold or directly consumed. Et al. 2015 stated that climatic variables, including extreme non-climatic factors, should be considered in the analysis of variable adaptation to climate change and vulnerability. These shifts in paradigm places the human agent at the center of the process of adaptation to climate change, particularly with regard to the role of social networks in transmission of new ideas. However, in sectors such as agriculture, it's recognized that social networks already play a crucial role adaptation through the diffusion of innovations. As can you see, diagram 1, climatic or non-climatic factors, resourcefulness, available of the tools for planting, emergency goods, social connections, government benefits, and innovations. This diagram manifested from Duao et al. 2015. The climatic or non-factors creates a room wherein trapping the certain opportunities to funds only contains resources allowed to producers to their jobs during certain phenomena. Social connections, government benefits, and innovation can be way out provide the producers terms and financial benefits for planning. And as you can see, our conceptual framework: independent variable harvest, dependent variable quarantine.
Chapter 2 Review of Related Literature. The main concepts in our study are the quarantine and harvest. Quarantine is the time period wherein animals or people that has a disease are kept away from others. Quarantine is defined and organized according to the level of their strictness. ECQ or Enhanced Community Quarantine being the strictest kind of quarantine, and new normal being the loosest kind of quarantine. On the other hand, harvest refers to the time of the year when the crops are gathered on a farm, or it is an act of cutting and gathering crops. Chapter 2 Review of Related Literature. The main concepts in our study are the quarantine and harvest. Quarantine is the time period wherein animals or people that has a disease are kept away from others. Quarantine is defined and organized according to the level of their strictness. ECQ or Enhanced Community Quarantine being the strictest kind of quarantine, and new normal being the loosest kind of quarantine. On the other hand, harvest refers to the time of the year when the crops are gathered on a farm, or it is an act of cutting and gathering crops.
And here are some of the related studies and their findings. The study entitled COVID-19 Lockdown, Food Systems and Urban-Rural Partnership Case of Nagpur, India. Mentioned in this study, India implemented a nationwide lockdown that caused the public to panic buy and stockpile food, which brought alarm at local levels. Regardless of the demands, local farmers cannot produce to maintain the supply due to the imposed lockdown that paused the production of agricultural supply. Also stated in this study that not only rural but also urban communities are affected by this phenomenon. The major weakness of the study was the data collection due to the strict lockdown protocols implemented in Nagpur. Another related study entitled The Effects of COVID-19 on Fruit and Vegetable Production in this study talk about the production of goods such as fruits and vegetables. The U.S. economy was affected in large parts due to threats in labor-intensive goods. It is shown that major crop losses includes $16 million in lettuce, $5 million in apples, and $4 million in grapes. Another related study entitled Impacts of a National Lockdown on Smallholders, Farmers' Income, and Food Security. Empirical evidence from 2 states in India. Discussed here is the impact of lockdowns and community quarantine affecting the farmers' income. In Odisha, India, during quarantines and lockdowns, farmers spend more time harvesting crops without comfort of machineries, causing distress selling due to inconsistent harvesting of crops. In Haryana, existing markets help the state to procure stable prices and goods. In summary, the above-mentioned studies show relation regarding the effect of quarantine to the production, income, and harvest of local farmers. It is shown that various effects can be drawn regarding the lockdown, particularly in the current situation of the local agricultural farmers that due to COVID-19 quarantine protocols, the decline in production, and food shortage at local levels are expected. The reviewed literature showed that the effect of quarantine impacts the production, income, and harvest of local farmers in an unpleasant manner. The methods and findings and conclusions allow this study to foresee implications that might also happen during the conduct of our own study, and this allowed our study to widen its scope and into different perspectives. This study will specifically cover the concerns of the local farmers regarding their income, harvest, and all about the concerns connected to their livelihood.
Chapter 3: Research Design and Methodology. Research Design. This study is a descriptive study which manifests the non-experimental design, specifically the post-test only survey by means of using researcher-made questionnaire. This means that we will be using questionnaires to assess the harvest of local farmers in New Lucena before and during the quarantine. Population and sampling. The target of population sampling will be 30 farmers from New Lucena. They will answer questionnaires provided by the researchers. Research instruments. The researchers will use open-ended questionnaires. The questionnaires will be translated to Hiligaynon so that it will be easier to understand. This means that the respondents will be allowed to answer in an open text format so that they can express their answers freely. Furthermore, the language will be used on the questionnaires is Hiligaynon. Reliability. A test-retest will be done to ensure the reliability of the test. The respondents will undergo 2 the same types of tests after a certain time has elapsed. Validity. To ensure the validity of the research-made questionnaires, the researchers will invite a teacher or someone in the field to critique our questionnaires. Data collection. The questions in this research is specific to find the answer about what, when, how, and where. The researchers will be utilizing an open-ended questions that will seek to more accurate and specific answers and is able to come up with multiple answers from this given data. Data analysis. Descriptive analysis will be used to describe the data of the respondents. Part 1 for the participants' profile and Part 2 for the presumed effect of quarantine to local farmers. Questionnaire. Part 1 will cover the participants' profile, which includes name, which is optional, age, sex, and farm location. Part 2 will cover the presumed effects of quarantine to local farmers, which will help us answer our objectives. That ends our research proposal on assessing the harvest of local farmers in New Lucena before and during quarantine. Thank you for listening and God bless.